Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs series at the crossroads of religion and life. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. These sights and sounds have become what most Americans think of when mentioning the Soviet Union. Turmoil throughout individual republics and a country on the verge of complete disintegration. But there's always been another side to the Soviet Union, a side hiding behind the veils of communism. The Soviet Union was and is a country with regions steeped in proud histories, these regions also having a wealth of vivid and beautiful culture. Today we look at the Soviet Union through the eyes of some Central Texas youth who made the journey of a lifetime. They visited the cradle of communism just weeks before this August coup that resulted in vast political changes within this one-time world superpower. Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. It's called Youth Travel Seminars, People in the Church in the Soviet Union. For the past 2 years, Mission Presbytery, the Texas Conference of Churches, has sent groups of high school and college students to the Soviet Union. The students not only tour the country and see some breathtaking sights, but they also have a chance to meet and talk with religious and government officials. This allows the group to discuss the emerging role of the church in the Soviet republics. For years, the Soviet government quashed the church's ability to play a role in society. But now, with the political ideology of Lenin falling out of favor with the people, the church may be the last hope to keep stability within the crumbling remnants of a failed communist system. Joining us today to share their thoughts on the Soviet Union are two high school seniors who participated on the most recent Soviet trip. They are Beth Ivy, a student at New Braunfels High School, and Elizabeth Cruz, who attends Austin High School. And joining us also is Linda Evans, who coordinated the trips to the Soviet Union as an associate director for the Seminary Relations and Development at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. And we welcome you all. And Beth, we'd like to have you begin with just telling us about when this trip was and what you did when you were there.
Okay, well, we went the last 2 weeks of June, and we traveled to Moscow. We also went to Zagorsk, which is the capital of, the center of all Russian Orthodoxy, and it's just outside of Moscow. Mm-hmm. We also went to Pskov and Novgorod, which are two ancient Russian Orthodox towns, and then we went to Leningrad or St. Petersburg. And we did just the usual sightseeing, but also did a lot of worship in Russian Orthodox churches and also some Baptist churches, too.
I see. And you were there a total of how
2
long?
weeks.
2 weeks, okay. Elizabeth, when you were there, you visited these various churches, not only the Orthodox Church, but give us a little bit of a sense of what it was like as you worship with these folks.
Well, before we went, the group got together and visited St. Elias, the Orthodox Church over by the capital, and we didn't know quite what to expect, and it was a lot different from the Protestant churches, the Presbyterian or the Baptist. But when we went to Russia, the first church that we visited was the Russian Orthodox, and they're incredible. They're beautiful. The history behind them, the icons, the candle lighting, and the devotion of all the people that are there 24 hours a day. And And it was the sense of just pride of all the people there was incredible. They were so proud of it, that they could now express their religion.
Even though they were speaking in a language you didn't understand, you picked up some of that.
The smiles that we got, the appreciation of us just being there, worshiping with them was just so incredible.
Well, that's good. I think that we'll have a chance to come back and have you go a little bit below the surface to some of what that meant. But I think we need, at this point, Linda, you've been the director and leader of these trips. Tell us how that all came about.
Well, actually, this was my 6th trip to the Soviet Union, but the past 2 years I've been concentrating on taking youth in. Youth from around the state of Texas, representing all different denominations, high school, college-age students. This really started with a phone call a couple of years ago from a minister friend in San Antonio who said, well, you've done some traveling to the Soviet Union. I have students who are interested in studying the church in that country, and after their study, they might want to take a trip. Do you know of someone who's doing this? And I didn't, so I went to Mission Presbytery and the Texas Conference of Churches to see if they would be interested in doing that, and offered to organize and lead the trips for them.
I see. So this was your 2nd trip with young people?
Yes, yes.
What is it that, from your standpoint as a person who is deeply committed in the life of the church, that was different about this trip, this particular one?
What was different about this trip?
From that religious standpoint.
From the religious standpoint, well, I think what we're hearing are lots of new opportunities for the church. With the presence of glasnost and perestroika, that's offered opportunities, but as well as challenges for the church. Just to list a few things, that we're talking about a church that has been oppressed for so many decades, and now with the new openness in the church, you're finding the challenges in Christian education. They're able to do Christian education, and they've never done that before. Therefore, they need written resources as well as people to come over and work with them. There are opportunities for new church development. I've heard of a new church opening in the outskirts of Moscow, or the Baptists who told us that they want to start 6 new churches in Moscow alone, but they need help with financing the beginning of those churches. There are, let's see, new church development and...
But don't you find the sense that that there's maybe more of a combination of hope and some dread in the face of all of this change that's going on?
Oh, I think the hope is in the churches, yes, because out on the streets, I didn't sense a lot of hope in the society. But I walk into the churches and I do see some hope for the future, and I feel that.
Let's come back to that in a bit, because I think that's the big story of 1991, is all this incredible change in the Soviet Union, which happened to have come to a climax just after you folks were there. And we're wondering whether maybe you had something to do with it.
Well, when we would come in contact with some people on the streets and outside the churches and the monasteries, they were very hopeful of a change coming. I don't think they expected what happened, but they always expressed that a better day was coming for them, and that they sensed it and they were happy, and that they always were optimistic about the future.
I think one thing, too, that I know that you have brought some memorabilia from your trip, and Beth, maybe you could start just showing us a little bit of this expression of the Russian spirit.
Okay. First, I'd like to explain this icon, which we bought in a monastery called Pechori, which is on the outskirts of Pskov. And this is an icon of the Immaculate Conception of Jesus Christ with Mary. And this is how all the churches are just completely adorned with these types of artwork. And they're really not art, they're writings, they're biblical writings. Spiritual, yeah. And the people use them to pray. It seems to appear that people are worshiping these icons, but actually they're praying through them. It's kind of a spiritual passageway to heaven.
Okay. Well, one of the things, too, that I think may be helpful, just from the standpoint of those of us in this country accepted churches like St. Elias that have icons as part of their worship setting, this is something that seems rather distinctive to both the Soviet Union, Greek Orthodox churches. Icons are not meant to be worship, but are, I think, veneration is the word that has
That's right.
been associated with that.
They said, we talked to a priest about the icons, and he said that when you have a feeling that you want to write an icon, you get together with your priest and you write it with him, and how you feel, and you bring out your feelings through the icon with him. And so it's not just a painting.
Mm-hmm.
The feelings.
And as
are
an
also
object of
expressed.
devotion, it becomes a means by which you are, and you enter into a spirit that you wouldn't without this material
Right.
object to help you.
I've heard them referred to as literally a sermon in color. And actually the Soviets or any Orthodox use the icon for a form of Christian education. I mentioned earlier that they have never had Christian education. So this is the way that the babushkas, the grandmothers, would bring in their young grandbabies and teach them the stories of the Bible and of the people in the Bible by standing in front of the icons.
Well, one of the things, too, I've been interested in is that, that after decades of religion being virtually declared illegal, or you're not supposed to have had that free religion expression in Russia, the grandmothers were the ones that kept the faith alive to a large extent through storytelling. And
That's correct.
that this generation comes along knowing a good bit about that because that continuity was kept by...
They thought the church would die when the grandmothers died. But they're always grandmothers, so it lives on.
Yeah.
The exciting thing, too, over the years of my travel is to see the young people coming back into the church. It used to be the young children or the babushkas, but now the young couples and bringing their children into the church, and more children of adolescent age, which before it was not encouraged. I mean, in the schools they were teaching atheism, so, you know, at an age when you're an adolescent you want to be accepted, so it was not acceptable to go to church. But now we're seeing that age come back into the church, and that's most exciting.
Okay. There's a church here and some other such related objects. Elizabeth, can you give us a little bit of orientation of another one of these show and tell objects?
Sure. Well, this is the Holy Trinity stamp that we got in an art square, and they were selling different stamps with different icons on them. And we visited a church in a cathedral in Leningrad called the Holy Trinity Cathedral and Theological Seminary, and right outside was an art square where I bought this stamp. And
So these other churches that are here in the way of models, what can you highlight those?
Well, actually, a couple of those are mine, I think. This is famous St. Basil's Cathedral, which every newscaster seems to stand in front of St. Basil's to do their news reports from Red Square in Moscow, and it's just a little wooden replica. And here is, this isn't necessarily a specific church, but they do lots of work with wood and make little wooden churches. And interesting, you would find things like this even before the days of Gorbachev and Glasnost.
that's like the architectural museum that we went to, that all the cathedrals were done in wood.
Oh, I see. And that was because, what would be the explanation for
Just
using
the very
that?
ancient, the very first cathedrals that they built were wooden. And it was a wooden museum, architecture museum there in Novgorod that we visited.
It was a tradition.
The Soviets have a real appreciation of their history and culture and have maintained that, I think. But a lot of the cathedrals, of course, have been abused over the years. Some of them actually have swimming pools inside, some of them are roller rinks, some are museums. So it's interesting. And now that they're giving them back to the churches, the incredible expense it is upon the church to renovate these cathedrals that have been, you know, have fallen into such disarray.
I see. Well, in terms of the you were mentioning a while ago, the young people in the Soviet Union, did you meet some folks your own age, Beth? And
Yes, we did. In Moscow, well, Linda has a friend named Katya who stayed with them over the Christmas holidays because she couldn't go home because she was going to school here and she couldn't go home. And so Linda's met up with her in Moscow, and she brought 3 friends with her who were also Moscow University students. And we just spent an evening with them. We went to a place called the Arbat, which means center in Russian, and it's a street where craftsmen and musicians come and just line the streets and people walk down it. And it's kind of just like a craft area. And so we did that with them and walked with them, and also went to Red Square. And it was interesting, we wanted to take their picture, but Lenin's tomb was behind them and would be a background, and so they made us turn around because they didn't want Lenin's tomb in the same picture. So that's just an idea of how the younger generations view Lenin, you know. But people, we did see, though, people who are still going through seeing Lenin, but the younger generations really don't respect him as much.
That was their way of saying that that's no longer an icon for this generation.
Right. So that was just a silent statement. Well, it wasn't silent, but, you know, in a way. But
Do they, I mean, do they listen to the same music that you listen to?
The Beatles.
The Beatles are really huge
They love
over
the
there.
Beatles.
Paul
Oh, really?
McCartney.
They're just catching up with it.
Yes, they had actually they had Beatle dolls of this nature. They had all 5 or 4 or the 4 Beatles. I don't even know, but all 4 of the Beatles and those stacking dolls. So they were very popular.
But their main question was, why haven't more young people come over? Why just now? And we said, for one reason, it was really dangerous 5 years ago, and it's just now becoming safe, and also it's very expensive. They're like, and they didn't understand that it was really expensive. And so.
Well, you could have invited them to come over here so they could have had first-hand experience of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you find back and forth at all? I mean, is it two-way to the extent that you find the counterparts to this group coming to the States?
There are some, as
They
Beth
wanted to get a group at the
mentioned.
church that we visited.
They did?
The Baptist church with Roland. The teachers, we met with some English teachers in Russia, and they wanted to get a group together and see if we could help them come over next summer.
I see. So there was some interest there.
That was in Pskov.
Yeah, it was in Pskov. And
We met with some teachers of English, right? And they were so excited about all the new opportunities that they were trying to negotiate possibilities for exchanges, which...
Well, maybe you've spread the idea a bit of that this is one way that you can really get into personal contact with folks that there's no substitute for.
There isn't. There isn't a substitute for that personal contact, and how life-changing it is. And I think as often as I have traveled, and as exciting as it is to travel in that country, I think the thing that touches me the most and the real gift that I come back with is to see how it touches the students whom I take over, and in the wonderful ways it influences their life in the future. They never view the world in quite the same way. It somehow becomes smaller.
Well,
their prayer life changes, their faces.
Why don't you all just pick up from there and tell us what difference it has made for you?
Well, you want to go? Or?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, it humbled me in a way. It made me proud for the country that I lived in, but also respectful of other people and in the different cultures that they live in. I also have a new appreciation for my freedom of religion, because just imagining going to my church and not being able to go in and worship, or that my pastor had been killed, or I just can't imagine such a thing, and that the need for Bibles is so great, and that we have so many in this country. So basically that's really what I've gotten from it, is that
you don't take any of that for granted anymore.
Well, no, I try not to, and I've done some presentations, and I try to spread that along and help people to see that. And also the prayer life, like Linda said, there are all these new faces that you see. You know, during the coup, it was really funny that I would be watching the TV reports and be looking for any kind of face that I would recognize. And that was so silly that, of course, you know, the chances of that happening were very rare, but just I wanted to see if I saw anybody I knew. So there are.
Now, I understand you took some Bibles with you.
Yes, sir.
But you didn't have to slip them to the folks. I mean, this is no longer a matter of being a legal sort of thing.
We took the Bibles over, and at first, a nun who spoke English approached me and was very concerned, and she was like, well, I don't understand why you're giving your Bibles away. If you have them, why not keep them? And I said, oh, well, we are from America, and we have many Bibles, and we wanted to bring some Russian Bibles over to some people who have never had them before. And then she understood. She was like, oh, because we didn't understand. I said, yes. And then when we would be in the cathedrals and we would give them to maybe an older grandmother who has never had her own Bible before, the emotions would just become overwhelming. They would cry and hug us and kiss us and be so overjoyed. Some even wanted to pay us, but we said no, and they thanked us, and it was really emotional. It was.
Well, share with us a little bit, Elizabeth, your own continuing experience of this, how this continues to impact your life.
Well, I'm much more patient now. The lines that they wait in, sometimes the people would not even know what they were waiting for. They would just be like, well, this line is so great, well, there must be something in that store that we would want. And the people were so, they were just very happy, and they tried not to think of all the bad things that had happened. They wanted to look into the future. And now I appreciate what I have, and like Beth said, the freedom of religion, it's sometimes when people take it for granted, the things that they have and that they can worship, it just puts it all into perspective now.
Well, I think that that's the real payoff of this trip, Linda. It's what it does for our young people here, and both in terms of their appreciating our society and culture and faith, and is there anything that you could add to that?
Well, actually, I think another value of the trip is they get to go over, of course, and experience this new culture, but then they also make a commitment to, when they return, to sharing their experience. Therefore, it really multiplies the benefits of the trip, gives other people new eyes looking this part of the world.
Could be that if some of our viewers had a congregation that would be interested in hearing more about this, they could give you a call.
Presentations with slides. Yes. I've already received a letter from Russia. And what was interesting, we returned to the United States about July 1st.
Right.
And I received a letter September 2nd, I think. And I looked at the postmark on it and said that he had written it July 31st. And it was before the coup had occurred. And so he really didn't have anything to say about that. And no indication of the coup was, I could tell, but it was just interesting that it had taken that long to get from the Soviet Union to the United States. When we were in the Soviet Union and we sent postcards back to friends and family, it took maybe 2 weeks, but because it was through the embassy. But taking over a month and a half to reach us is
perhaps a sign of the disarray that has afflicted the country since you were there. And I think that one of the things, too, that I can't let the show conclude without recognizing, it looks like we got another icon here on the table in the form of something about Pepsi. Is that, can I believe my eyes?
I'll get this up. They love Pepsi in Russia, and this is a Pepsi bottle, and it's very, very sweet. It doesn't even taste like Pepsi, but this is a Pepsi shirt, and we brought a lot of T-shirts back. They had Hard Rock Cafe T-shirts, and which we thought was kind of funny, but and they had basketball T-shirts in Russian and hockey and.
Now, Beth, you said, did you say these were the Beatles here that we were looking at?
No. They do have Beatles of this nature with the stacking dolls.
Yeah, but what are these?
Matryoshkas.
Matryoshka dolls, or just nesting dolls or stacking dolls. And I bought these in Novgorod, I believe, and they're very, very tiny. I don't know if you can even see it or not, but it's very tiny. The last one is very tiny, and I bought this one because each one of them is painted differently, and some of them are even bigger, that you can buy them all kinds of different sizes.
So it's just traditional Russian art, stacking dolls, is that?
We bargained for them. They were, oh, since you're American girls, we'll give them too cheap. So.
What about that egg over there? I can see that around the Pepsi bottle. Show me that.
This is just a decoration of a decorative egg that they painted. The most that they painted, they had lacquer boxes, which were very popular. The stack dolls were also very popular, and the eggs were very popular. And the inlaid wood, they had a lot of boxes that you could buy that had inlaid wood in them. And I bought a cross at the Arbot, and they had different. We were looking for a lot of crosses, and we got a lot of jewelry, and they had a lot of crosses like in boxes, expressing the Orthodox faith. A lot of Orthodox churches.
Oh, this is another kind of box. That's just traditional art. It's
They do a lot of hand-painted things, a lot of work with wood.
Yeah. Well, I think that whole realm of art that's being opened up to our society today is something that we've got new appreciation of as a result of the glasnost and perestroika, and also the music. And Linda, after one of your former trips, you sang a little song for the church we were in. Could you share that with the more general public at this time?
Well, I actually would be delighted to sing for you. I have a brief story, though, that I'd like to share that leads up to this particular song. And this was not this past summer with Beth and Elizabeth, but a previous trip that I had taken a group from around the United States, not just around Texas. And it was a group of about 100 U.S. Christians, all different denominations. And we were entering the prayer house for the Baptist in Moscow, and we were entering for a Sunday evening worship service. And they quickly ushered us up into the balcony, like they did. We did worship there, our group this summer. And we sat next to the choir, and we listened to several pastors preached, and several anthems from the choir, hymns from the congregation. But we particularly wanted to sing this evening, for we prepared a hymn in Russian for just such a gathering as this group.
And in the minute that we have, let's just have a little bit of a flavor of that.
Okay, okay. It's a very familiar hymn. Великий Бог, когда на мир смотрю я, на все, что ты создал рукой Творца, на всех исчест, кого свой свет даруя, питаешь ты с любовью Отца. Тогда поет мой дух, Господь, тебе, как ты велик, как ты велик. Тогда поет мой дух, Господь, тебе, как ты велик, как ты велик.
Well done. And I think the fact that you can bring that to us with a melody that we recognize, even though the words are not familiar, nevertheless shows how we can reach across the cultures with new understanding and new appreciation. And it's with real appreciation that we would like to thank you, Beth Ivy, Elizabeth Cruz, and Linda Evans for being with us today, and you folks for being with us as well on Austin Faith Dialogue, as we've had a chance to take this look at the Soviet Union through the eyes of Texas young people and through the eyes of faith. Be with us next week for our next edition. I'm Richard Thompson, thanking you for watching, and peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.